Well, we've been talking a lot on the show about the race to find a treatment or vaccine for coronavirus. Joining us now with an unusual story is a tech entrepreneur, Steve Kirsch, who is the founder of the COVID-19 Early Treatment Fund. Good to have you here. You are actually from Silicon Valley.
That's correct. Yeah, I'm CEO of M10 Networks. It's a high-tech company doing digital currency.
So how are you parlaying being a tech entrepreneur and getting into the COVID situation?
Sure. I was at the end of March, I was locked down just like everybody else was, and I looked for what I could do to make a difference. So I started talking to scientists that I knew, and they all told me basically two things. They said that drug repurposing was the fastest and the cheapest way to end the pandemic. And the other thing that was surprising to me is that I discovered that the top scientists were not being funded for this. And that was really tragic. And I thought I could make a difference. And that's why I started this COVID Early Treatment Fund, to be able to fund the scientists that are doing the best work to make a difference in this disease.
Why the treatment and not a vaccine?
Well, vaccines will take a long time before we can get them to market and we can get them distributed to billions of people. And so this is something that we can do in the meantime. And also vaccines are not 100% effective. So it's really important that we have a treatment that works if you get the disease and you're not vaccinated or the vaccine didn't work. And so that's why these studies that are being done by scientists on existing drugs are just super important, and they're being overlooked today. So we have the world's top scientists are basically not getting the funds that they need to do their research, and that's tragic.
I have to ask you, have you seen any promising results?
Yeah, we actually have, and at this point, I'm very confident that one or more of these existing drugs will be effective against COVID. And so, for example, Bert Vogelstein, he's the most cited scientist of all time in any field in the history of the planet. And he has data showing an 80% reduction in hospitalization rates. Now, you would think people would be throwing money at him, but he's been unable to raise the $1 million that he needs to complete his study. And so, that's tragic. Joe Vinetz, he's testing Camostat at Yale. Camostat is the top drug mentioned by coronavirus experts. If they were sick with the virus, this is the drug that they would take, is Camostat. And nobody else was funding this. So we stepped in and we funded the trial at Yale, which is now enrolling patients. Eric Lindsay at Washington University, he needed money to test a drug that he had clinical proof has a reduction in 80% or more in the hospitalization rates, maybe even up to 100%. And he was struggling to find funds. And so we saw just an enormous opportunity to make a huge difference here.
How do you go about deciding where to focus the funds for the research trials?
So to focus the funds, what I did very early on was recruit Robert Salesiano. He's a top scientist at Johns Hopkins, and he recruited a group of 12 scientists from all across the country, experts from Harvard, from Johns Hopkins, from Northwestern, and University of Virginia, and so forth, UCSD, and all of these people collectively have an enormous amount of knowledge with respect to this disease. And in fact, we have one of the world's, there are only 20 coronavirus experts in the world, and one of those 20 experts is on our scientific advisory panel.
How can everyday people get involved in this fund?
So there are three things that you can do to make a difference. If this virus has impacted you in some way, maybe it's kept you home, kept you from seeing people, affected your job. If it's affected you in some way, there are three things that you could do. One is you can go to our website, it's treatearly.org, and make a donation. And the donation could be $1, it could be $10, it could be $100, whatever you can afford. The second thing you do is go on social media and let people know about what we're doing and how we're making a difference. And the third thing that you can do is that if you do get COVID, if you're one of the 30 million people who have COVID, is to see if there's a clinical trial in your area and enroll in that trial.
Well, thank you for what you're doing. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Sure, my pleasure.
For more Business First AM, check us out on social media. We're on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And go to businessfirstam.com for where to see our show on TV.